3 days a week, and our intention at the start was to connect people, to bring some great content, showcase some amazing speakers, and just have some great conversations and connections. And that's what we're doing. For those of you who don't yet know me, my name is Alex Tullio. I am the CEO of Financial Executive Women, and we are a membership organisation that is all about progressing women and also addressing gender equality in the workplace. So thank you for joining us. And of course, to our members and regulars, thank you as always for spending your time with us. Our partners, as with every community, are such a big part of what we do, and we so welcome you and all your staff to these amazing live streams. Haven't said for a while, but please do share these. These are free. They're free to all employees. We have some amazing guys and gals in this community. So if you know of anyone who might benefit from the connection, some wisdom, a bit of laughter and some community, please just share that bit.ly link, because we would love to have you with us as well. Now, as always, we have so much coming up. You can imagine this is not a small undertaking, and we're always thinking about our next guests and what's happening in the weeks ahead. We have Donna Eiby with us today, and I'm going to introduce Donna in a moment. She's going to be fabulous. And then I can't believe I say every Thursday, where did the week go? So this is our last episode for this week, but we are back on Tuesday. And Tuesday, as you can all see from that group of names there, Tuesday is going to be a pretty big one, because it's the first time there's going to be 5 of us. So it'll be all my facilitation skills over Zoom to have a facilitated conversation with an amazing bunch of women who all come from such diverse backgrounds, all for the one goal in this example of actually putting on an ethical enterprise conference, about coming together around a committee, all around women working wonders. And there are some amazing stories that they're going to share, and I think you'll find that truly inspiring and really interesting as well. And then on Wednesday, we have got the fabulous Penny Lacazo, who will be known to many of you. Penny is a happiness hacker. She's just written her new book about how to hack happiness. She is globally known. She's an author, a speaker, a researcher, and a teacher. And it's going to be really interesting talking with Penny about literally how do we get more balance in our lives? How can we be more adaptive? And I know, Donna, we're going to be talking about that as well from a different angle. So that's going to be another great show next week. And of course, with our masterclass series. So one of the things that we're aiming to do here is to keep bringing some more in-depth knowledge and learning and ways that you can tap in and out to different formats. So we have our masterclasses. We bring these to you live every fortnight. For our members, of course, this is part of your membership experience, so take advantage of this. We have great experts that show up for this community. And of course, if you're not yet a member, please do take us up on our invitation to come along to one of our events for free, and just to see what it is we're so passionate about and the depth of this amazing organisation. So Cam, thanks for putting the links in the chat there. Well, without further ado, I can see you there, Donna. So I'm going to introduce you formally, and then we'll get straight into a great chat. So for those of you who don't yet know Donna, after 20 or so years heading a consultancy that undertook global skill building transformation programs for the likes of Hewlett-Packard and Verizon, Donna embarked on a project to create programs in 21st century skills. This sudden departure was largely ignited through a report published by the Institute of the Future Work Skills 2020. And in a nutshell, the report said that the world needed new skills for work, and soon. So in 2016, the Future Work Skills Academy was born, and in keeping with Donna's nature, and I love how you say this, Donna, and pretty clear evidence of what future organisations might look like, she established an adaptive, collaborative coalition of skills experts around the world, building online training programs in these skills. As Donna says, it took a bit to find them and learn how to design engaging online learning, particularly in these skills. They've been the recipient of an enormous amount of generosity from sources as diverse as MIT Media Labs and Future of Work leaders such as Heather McGowan. And as Donna says, we finally hit on a successful formula in 2019. Now, there's more I could read, Donna, but it's going to be so much more interesting to actually talk to you and hear your story from yourself. So firstly, welcome.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Alex. Fantastic to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. It's so exciting. Got up this morning I was sitting here waiting.
I know you've been sitting at your computer since 8 a.m. ready for us to turn the Zoom on.
Yeah, so I was very excited. Thanks for the opportunity and thank you for that introduction. So I'm my whole thing is about, you know, I think amplification of people's potential. And if you can look at the that picture there with the cape. I was kind of like a superhero nerd, but I wasn't a real nerd until we came up with this kind of theme in the narrative around the academy. And that was that we saw, after we looked at those 10 skills that came out for the Institute for the Future, that what they're really about is being human. And they're all human capabilities. They're not technical capabilities, they're human. And we have them, but really, I think the last time we probably took a look at them as like a whole world was probably in the 1600s or whatever, where wonder and spirituality was something that people were very concerned with. So I think we lost a bit of that with the Industrial Revolution. The 20th century privileged everything that was about cognition and very little that was about the socio and emotional parts of human beings and of course our spiritual part. And we appreciate that what that led to was a lot of data that says that people were highly disengaged in work and learning. I think that happened. But we look at the superhero theme, superheroes, and I didn't know this, but now of course I've become a nerd. So we have the DC and we have Marvel. They're the groups that are predominant, I guess, in the superhero genre. And there's a big difference, which I didn't know. So DC are kind of aliens that are born with these superpowers, but Marvel are human beings that have superpowers that they deny most of their life, but they all get together at this school of a mad academy. And when they learn to control their superpowers, they become superheroes. And so that was very interesting to me. And so I think in this time, it was interesting that their report said 2020, because the future that I've been talking about with all my future of work nerds suddenly came crashing into us in March this year.
And from a different pathway. So, okay, so as you already know, and for those of you listening, so Donna and I, we did our promo whenever it was, Donna, and that's, kind of a couple of minutes. I reckon we spoke for nearly an hour that time. I've got 2 pages of things I want to ask you. So already you've taught me something, because I also did not know about the distinction between the Marvel superheroes and DC. So thank you. Tell us a bit, before we get into what you're doing now, I am endlessly curious about the journey that people go on to get to where they are now. So what led you through your career to establishing the Future of Work Skills Academy? What were the sort of defining moments for you? Is this what you wanted to be when you grew up?
I've always loved education. When you've got to find your North Star and your purpose, which people ask you to do and say to you when you're young, but I think it takes a bit to work out what that is. I love it. I love the relationship with people, and I love to see the growth because to me it gives people kind of independence and it amplifies their skills and confidence and so on and so forth. I really enjoy it. So I started as a teacher. I was a bit of a goth. I will say, and I clashed with the Queensland education system really badly. That was in the 80s. And so I thought, well, I didn't want to participate in what I had done my first degree in. So off I went and joined the army, as you do as a goth. Yes, I did. I was actually, strangely enough, my father was a big military family, 6 generations, whatever. So I decided to, because of course, being a goth and not getting on with the Queensland education system, I'm going to do really well in the army. But I was an army reservist.
It's an obvious segue.
Of course.
Absolutely.
As things are. And yeah, so I was an officer in the Army Reserve, and I was offered a position at the Royal Military College, which went to my mother. And it came in a letter. And my mother said, this is mail and it's army, throw it in the bin. And then at the end of the call, I said, Mum, can you get those letters out? I just want to. She opened it and it was a letter. Of course, I wasn't in, but I was invited to a panel to be selected. And I did it just from that. Weird, right? Like, so there's stochastic moments in life that just turn you somewhere else. So off I went, and that was hideous. Absolutely hideous. It was just as bad as my father said after it. He said, oh my God, I didn't want to say anything to deter you, but how horrible. So I did that, left after 6 years, Enjoyed learning lots of stuff there, learned great things, made some excellent friends, not my value system, not me, but a fabulous organisation in a lot of ways. In what it says it's going to do on the tin, that's what it does. I then went to start my own very unsuccessful first business, and I was paid by the Office of Small Business in Victoria to run a series of workshops, how not to start a small business. So that's
how not to start a small
I know, that was my claim to fame.
But no, but this is good. It's a powerful theme that recurs through this series, is that no one needs to see the show reel. Like, it's through these mistakes and learnings in our own experience that we can actually, coming back probably to teaching and transfer of knowledge, and I know you're passionate about storytelling as well. This is the power of having these things.
Yeah, for sure. You've got to accept failure. If you've got to suck it up. But if you get beaten up enough, you have to just keep going, and persistence, resilience and the rest of it. So I started this business, but I'm quite persistent, very curious, and I'm a collaborator. So up out of all this came this business, and it just took off. And really, it was just, we never advertised, and we had an enormous amount of work, Melbourne-based in Collins Street, but all over the world. So we did that. But I have to say, once I got platforms, software, books, on and on, loads. We trained about 2,500 people just in the classroom stuff. And then there was hundreds more in terms of on-the-job training, inflow, learning. But I got to say that after 25 years, and it was 25 years, I just felt like we were being paid not to achieve the objectives that we were contracted and engaged to do.
Explain that a bit more.
Well, we were engaged to transform organisations, and we were not really successful because all our clients were very long term, actually from 1997 to 2016, same clients. So I saw these versions of change that actually were not change at all, other than logos and whatever. But the constant there was that regardless of the fact that we were supposed to be transforming human capital, I didn't feel like we were really giving to the people that we really are. We were beholden to the brand, very loyal to the brand, but I just felt like we weren't doing the right thing by the humans in the picture.
The humans. So let's get into the humans then. So it's so interesting, because I think it's a super interesting thing when you can reflect on something you've been doing for that long, very successfully, and go, we're not actually sure if we're delivering what we want to or having the impact. So what was the bit that was missing? I mean, and how does this obviously translate into what you do now and how you're approaching it in a different way?
Well, I have had an interest, Alex, in organisational structures and organisations as places for humans, or not for humans. And so I did my master's out of Warwick Business School, I think in 2016, 17, 18. And that's what really switched me on to this organisational structures and the idea that I didn't appreciate that organisations are arenas. There are other things, of course, but they're power arenas, and there's power play. And if you can shift all you like, you can have all the money you like, but those power dynamics ultimately, in my view, affect every single thing. So it doesn't really matter if you're not part of that, and that is not focused on the greater good of the humans within the organisation, then nothing will ever change. So that was a defining moment for me, the arena, because then I looked around and thought, oh my God, there it's all happening in front of me. So again, it was education for me that enlightened me to the fact that I just felt like I could do this differently. What I really wanted to do was make the change within individuals and make that a surge of individuals, because I always saw change happening from leadership, and with the pyramid, there was no change here to give people the skills to make the vision or participate in the vision. It wasn't human-centered, but then even if they could participate in the vision, to actually be the change that the organisation wanted them to be, because they were missing the emphasis on bringing everyone on board. So I'm chipping away at the bottom of the pyramid. It's exciting down here. It's big.
Oh, it's so exciting. We're down here with you. But there's some real, there's some big themes here. So, fast forward to where we are now. And I think when we were talking a couple of weeks ago in our long, wide-ranging conversation, And I'm sure I'll paraphrase wrongly, but we were talking about something along the lines of, the future of work, there are still organizations and leaders who are still saying, yep, it's kind of still down the road. And you're like, it's here, like it's happened, probably in a different pathway than what we expected. I mean, we don't talk much about the pandemic or COVID on here. We kind of just get on with it. But it's super interesting because it's almost, I think it's been the catalyst for what's kind of been coming, that's been kicked down the road to really, really address what the future of work looks like, how we engage everyone, how we bring everyone on new skills. And suddenly we find, I reckon a lot of leaders and organizations don't really know what to do or how to even bring people along. I mean, talk to us about that.
So I'll just pick through some of those things. As you say, these are big things, but I think there's first of all, everyone is a futurist, absolutely panicked when this happened. It was very interesting because everyone could see where this was going, and that I believe this is the most cataclysmic thing to happen to human beings in ever. Actually, it's like a comet hit us. We're always worried about that in sci-fi movies, but I'm not saying it's damaging, but it is a liminal space. We'll get to that in a minute. But the conversation about why is it? So just to look at the Institute for the Future, they're not my skills, but I have really into those skills, those 10 skills. And they're a list, not in any order. We had to order them, and we had to have some sort of system classification of them, and then we had to look at the learning science and so on and so forth, and the learning journey. But let's just take, for example, what we call Human Plus, and that is social intelligence, novel and adaptive thinking, visual sense making, and the design mindset. Those are skills that you require to lead people in an organisation that is not no longer place-based, because it requires you to have skills that go across culture, time, and place. That's what they were on about. They were on about a world that was virtual, but it was hybrid. So you go between the two. So the structures we built around office spaces, corner offices, and all the rest of that stuff, the car park and the rest of it, those things work well. We're all prisoners in there. But bust them out, and you've got the potential of an entire workforce ghosting you. So there's a reason they had these skills. You have to be human-centered. I believe you end up being a person that's pastoral. That's where I think our urgent need is at the moment, is as leaders, we've got to check in with our people, just as human beings. So I think there's a pastoral role coming out of that. But also it's talking about getting everyone online like this. We also have to be curators of experiences with people. And there's a great article, a fantastic article, and these are going to be shared in the link, by Annie Pecksham, and it was called Keep Your People Learning When You Go Virtual. And it was Harvard Business Review, and it was in April, but it was very interesting to me because it said everyone goes cognitive. There are two types of ways we learn, cognitive and social, and everyone goes cognitive. And you have to go social, but that's for everything. We go cognitive, we got Zoom, we got going on that. But the very first thing I'd say to anyone to change completely the success they have right now is think about, are you going cognitive with your management and communication of your team, or are you going social emotional? Are you looking at communicating and understanding and building a social emotional connection? I think that's number one. And of course we're not ready. Why? Because we've got 20th century education built really to appease a group of activist women who didn't like industrialists exploiting street children and sticking them in factories. So they went, well, we'll build schools. And what do they build schools for? To create factory workers, disciplined, routine people, not problem solvers. And we privileged that sort of thinking and education right up until now. And now we're having to have a bit of a rethink because we're not ready for this.
We're not ready for this.
We can be.
So this, and on here we love to have lots of really practical tips as well. And Cam, thanks for putting that link for that article in the chat. And also, as I always say, take the opportunity to ask Donna some questions, because you have us as a captive audience if you are on Zoom, and of course through the other platforms as well. Cam can also facilitate questions if you've got them. So Donna, I find this really interesting when you're talking about cognitive, and also that, but as humans, we're social and emotional creatures. So cognitive isn't enough. And I think this probably relates to something else that you and I were chatting about. And I remember you said to me, it really stuck in my head that, we've got mindset, I think you said then skill set and tool set, but what we always tend to go straight to is the tools. So even the example you've just given, you think of the world that we've all been in for the last however many months now. What was the first thing we went, we've got to get the tech right? Well, yep, okay.
Yeah.
So we need the tech and we need the camera and we need to have Zoom meetings or whatever it is. So when you're talking about, so as leaders bringing our teams along, and as you say, there's now this potential, we can't gather them in a conference room. How do we start to weave in some of that? How do we make our interactions more social and more emotional, especially if that's not your natural style, for example?
Yes, it certainly takes practice, doesn't it? I mean, I came from the military and I ran billion-dollar bids. You can imagine. I was so convergent, my thinking. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Everything was so fast and under enormous pressure for decades. And I had whole teams of people doing the same thing. So I got it when I started doing this training, and this ignited for me because I went to the D school in Potsdam because I felt my mind needed to be loosened up a bit. When I was doing my MBA, I thought, my mind felt like a trap. So I went there but I've got to say, I've had to do a lot of work to change how I thought. And to be aware, but actually, I think that was in me anyway. I just had to crust all that stuff and bring that out. So I think it is challenging, but what I would suggest is go back, for example, and listen to these broadcasts, because you have covered these things again and again. Heather Dawson, as an example, talking about being present and just simple things like tactics to breathe, and the list goes on and on and on. And I think that's a good place to start. And also we for this program, we had the 4 skills in Human Plus. As soon as this happened, I went, oof, because I appreciated we needed something else. So one of the other skills is virtual collaboration, which was never really something I enjoyed. It was a bit kind of protocol-y, command and control business. And so I went out looking for what's similar. And what's similar I found was community building. So as example, if you look at and you could get online anywhere, you can get on YouTube and have a look at this, but if you look at the principles community, they are about purpose.
Yeah.
And they're about bringing, and it's not a transformation program, it's sprinkling community behaviors within your organization that bring people together, because people will be attracted to them because we can't help it. So I'd look definitely at community. The Australian Community Managers, they have some really great content, free content and YouTube, etc. But I would go straight, my thing is community management, and that's how, because it's focused around the human first and it's pastoral. But I think the most important thing for me is to kind of check in with myself all the time. What am I doing? What am I doing right now in my engagement with people? I had someone say to me yesterday, oh, that was really boring. And I said, look, I'm really sorry. And she was kind of red because she said, no, she said, that was boring. It wasn't engaging. So, talking at people forever, and just having a talking head and slides and whatever, and Zoom calls with meetings just isn't engaging. So the other thing I'd be doing is asking my team, what delights you? What are your pain points? They are the 2 questions design thinking asks. It's the center of everything.
Love it.
And as a leader, I'd be absolutely front and center asking the question, what problem are you trying to solve? Mm-hmm. It's hard. There are so many. So pick one. Pick one based on your emotion and the feeling you're getting from your people. I have seen an amplification of anxiety like that. It continues. So I'm feeling it. I'm sure everyone else is feeling it, particularly where we're not with people. You can sense it. What problem am I trying to solve, and get into it? Very first thing, find out 2 things from everyone. What are your pain points? and what makes you happy? Those two questions are simple.
They're simple and they're powerful, aren't they?
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Kim, thanks for your comment in there. Kim says, I zoom past an article, well done. For the first time, the Australian banks are truly concerned about their employees' wellbeing. I've never received so many comms from employers asking how everyone is doing. It's dramatic. And I think, yes, I mean, this is, as you say, it's becoming more pastoral, as you say, Donna, that, people are genuinely concerned about others' mental health and well-being and sense of isolation and anxiety and all these things. And I feel like from a business perspective, a lot of leaders that we speak to are really trying to balance the human with, hey, I want to check in, but I've also got results. But I think what you're talking about here is, well, it's not balancing against the human, it's being human and being more empathetic. And the focus and the outcomes come from asking questions like, what delights you? What are your pain points? We've all got this curse of the epidemic of busyness. So, what is the problem we're trying to solve here?
Exactly.
I think they're foundational. I'm really curious because obviously you speak to businesses all over the world and leaders, and obviously you don't need to divulge any names. But I'm curious, even with everything that's happening that we're talking about, are you still finding that there are organisations that still kind of have their head in the sand about the future? Like it's still something that's kind of down there instead of we're in it? Like, are you finding there are still some kind of dinosaur organisations and thinking out there?
Oh, there's so much of it. And it goes something like me talking about the things I was just talking about, and then someone saying, oh, there's no way we'll get the C-suite or the board on board there. That's just so foreign to them. And I just look at them and say, well, you're just not going to be there, you see. People don't understand that the command and control hierarchical structures we had when we had a physical workspace don't work when
But
you are
surely
distributed.
you've still got the titles, Donna. I mean, I've still got the big title, even if it's not physical. Like, what's changed? Nothing's changed. We're just doing the same thing via Zoom.
Exactly.
Like, is that kind of a bit of the delusion here? That
it's exactly. But what the problem is, the wheels have fallen off because that model doesn't work. Why? Because people don't feel in a safe space. And that's the message over and over again. Mexico, India, all across the US, Australia, New Zealand this morning with Maori and Samoan leaders. It never stops. It's 10 of these a day, and the conversation always slips back to people not being in a safe space. And I wanted to mention this other article because I think, again, going back to answers, what are the answers? This was an article by Shameen Prasantham, and this was last Thursday in the MIT Sloan Review, and it's called How Not to Waste a Crisis, Mindfully Manage the In-Betweenness. The answer, just to finalise that kind of loop around people that aren't moving, there's a lot that aren't moving, but disruption like this can cause, it's fatal if you don't adapt.
Yeah.
If organisations say that's not what, you can still deliver being a human being, you can still do it, but you got to build a community, not a hierarchy, because it won't work in a hybrid environment slipping between the two. But this article, this person says there are 3 characteristics to the liminal space. And what is that? The threshold between where you are, where we were in March, and where we need to go. Human beings don't like it because our ancient brain is fearful of change because it's high risk if we're moving. And these are the characteristics: ambiguity. So you have a suspension of norms, which I'm feeling like massively, and this is, I think, pretty common, but an enhanced spirit of solidarity brought by people like yourself who do wonderful things like this. But love, potentiality, the scope for transformation, they are the characteristics. There's times in history that this has happened. So what can go bad, because I'll end with what can go good, people can panic, freeze, or be impulsive. How do you actually take advantage of this? You harness opportunities by pivoting calmly, keeping it calm, actively connecting with everybody out there, making sure that you're constantly connecting and actively connecting. But what I thought was really interesting is learning and growing without overreaching. Now that, of course, I was very interested in that. People can't just have too much. There's a little bit, because too much, it's too much for us. We're already feeling like this, and you throw a whole lot of new learning on people that's too much. So that's what they said. The world can make a huge, all of us in our individual ecosystems can all take advantage and make this better, but we do have to consider those three things. So
and I'm sure, and again, people ask questions, and thanks for putting that article link as well in the chat there, Cam. I think we're all resonating with this. You know, we can resonate with the feeling frozen and kind of paralyzed with that fear and just being completely overwhelmed. And the minute you say, you know, we've got to not overreach, time and time again, I don't know how many episodes we've done now, but invariably we talk about being overwhelmed, the days getting even longer. People are really in this reflection and inflection point, I think. And I love hearing you talk about this as well, because I think a lot of us rebel against the thought of going back, you know, to the norm. Like whatever the hell that was, it wasn't really working that well anyway. So this, and, you know, I can't help myself, Donna. When you're talking about, you know, we're talking about bureaucracies and outdated hierarchical norms and, you know, all these different symbols. But of course, you know, one of the things that we talk a lot about in our community, of course, is diversity, not just from a gender perspective, but what's holding back. Why aren't the numbers changing? We see so many reports, they're not changing fast enough. And it's not just around gender, it's diversity of thought and background and culture. And it's just, I hear you talk about this from a different but same perspective, right? Like this is where we get the best out of people, is to have these diverse and, as you say, adaptive communities and teams. That's where the magic is, surely.
Exactly. And, you know, without the physical workplace, we have so much greater opportunity for diversity to happen. But the reason it doesn't happen, because people ask me about this gender thing, it's a bit of an interest of mine, diversity overall, because the research says with these skills that the more diverse with some controls, the greater the outcome. I mean, the ROI for organisations is enormous to get that right. So why haven't they? Power, the arena. Because people are in charge. People in charge don't want to give up the status quo. They want to maintain it. So they have to die. So maybe this is it. I don't know. But I think this is, you know, this is something that we can't fight this change. And as a sector, for example, one of the sectors that I have an interest in and that we represent, and I've been speaking to them, they had a research where they went out to everyone and said about how they were feeling going back to the physical workspace. This is not frontline workers. 90% don't want to do it.
Yeah.
90%. They were just freaked out and said, what can we do to get people back? We've obviously got to change they don't want to go back to. Exactly. So I kind of like it, although I do feel like this is, I mean, I'm not suggesting that it's fun, but I'd rather be on the bus driving this mad thing, you know, and being with the group of people that, you know, will take over the wheel as we get, you know, to do our sections and our, you know, have our you know, time at the wheel. I'd rather be on that than either left behind, like by left behind, or just sitting at the station waiting for the next train to come, you know.
Because that's when you feel like you're out of control. And we all know, you know, we can only control, you know, certain things in our sphere of influence, but it is that difference between kind of sitting there and waiting for something to happen to you. And I think you know, one of the things you talk about is how we design that blueprint for the future of work, right? That is actually designed around, like, this is an opportunity. Tell us a bit about, because I know that one of your programs is around optimizing human performance, and you're doing a lot of work with that at the moment. So I'd love to understand a bit more, because again, in our community, you know, you've got, you know, lots of financial services and professional services, and there are lots and lots of leaders in this community that I'm sure are going, well, this is super interesting. I'm resonating. I'm not really sure how. Like I have the want to go to this new way of being, but how? So can you tell us a bit about the program and how leaders can really start to take their teams along with them?
Now, Kim's got a really good question, and I just want to I want to remember to address that. It was an excellent question, Kim. So the program really has been in production since 2016. We have the micro credentials, which are the skills, but then, you know, how do you move people? So we built this program, which is a combination of people doing case studies and influencers coming together into live meets and how these things work in organisations. In between digital, they do digital. That's where MIT Media Labs helped us with the digital, optimising learning through digital, and there's some community hubs in there. But the big change for us was the methodology, which was one of our users suggested, that takes those skills and applies them to a framework that is then shone on workplace challenges, problem frame and problem solve. So we call it the Human Plus framework. And so our program, it's an 8-week program. It's spread out over 8 weeks. Self-directed learning, getting together with the live meets to talk to influencers and so on and so forth. And then could have been Ginger, my dog, but she's still asleep. And so, and then we do the workplace challenge. Now, what we pivoted calmly to was giving the poll and adding, I want to reimagine my workplace in a hybrid context. And 87% of people in the last part of the program that's going now wanted that problem. So then how do you do it? Then we apply it, and they use the method to do that. And it starts a whole lot of conversations. Largely this program, in my view, is mindset shifting. Yeah. It's to shift your mindset, because there's a lot of stuff we've got to crack off to get there, but it is an awakening. It is an awakening, and that's the purpose of that program. It changes people without a doubt. Most people get this, probably 20% just like don't get it at all, but the majority of people, it changes them. They never think the same.
And how interesting, isn't it, that we always come back to what's between the ears? It is mindset, awareness, you know, all these things can either be the barrier or the opportunity. So to your point, and Kim, thank you for that question. This is a great question. So so Kim's asked and commented, one aspect of the old normal that I really miss is the human aspect. I think of this as the kitchen conversation or the water cooler conversation. To me, it represents an opportunity to check in on casual things. How's your weekend, the house move, etc. That's not really happening, and the result is that we always feel like we're on. How do we do this in the new normal? And I agree. I think there's so much to that. What's your view, Donna?
It's an excellent question, Kim. Thank you for that. We're still working that out, by the way, but my first thing is to ask people that question. How would they like that replaced? What would that look like? We've started to get used to some of the tools now and how we interact, what we like and don't like, and I just go out to people and say, because everyone's missing it. We all miss that, because work is about, you know, purpose. And they were actually our second family in a lot of respects, regardless of the fact that it's dysfunctional family. In a lot of the times, they're still our family. We miss them. So how do we put out a poll, put out a survey to people to say all the things about how you're feeling, and then focus on the ones that are the most urgent based on them, and then ask them, what would you like to do? How do you feel that could work for you? And they will tell you. And there'll be somebody out there who has a great idea, and that becomes then snowballs for sure. This, for example, can't be worked now, and there's Alt VR, which is a platform which we get together as animated figures, quite fun, but you have to have really strong computers for it. And also people just need some help with learning how to use these. But these tools are out there. I love technology. It can connect us, and there will be people in your teams who have ideas. And in a year's time, it's going to be huge, and people will be feeling a lot better, I'm sure of it.
Donna, you say that alt VR and us being characters, and I can already hear Cam's mind ticking over about how he can be doing that with us. So stay tuned, everyone. It's inevitable that I am on this journey with him. But it's super interesting. And this is the thing that, again, as you're talking and answering that great question, what is so clear to me is what we're saying is, oh, you know what? Ask people. Like, we get so inwardly, and it's not through any real design. It's just kind of like you said, what we're used to, and it's whether we're in the office and we're inwardly focused, and we get hung up, I think, on this. Well, we've got to have the answers, or just ask people what they think. And I think as a leader, it's facilitating the space. And as you said, right back at the start of our chat, having that space, safe space, being actually people feel they can tell the truth. What's your pain point? What delights you? Well, actually, my pain point is back-to-back Zoom meetings that are unrelenting and I'm exhausted. How can we do something different, So I told you this would go super fast, and we're pretty much at the end. But I'd love to know, I mean, we've talked a bit about a lot of things, but who are you seeing again, and you don't have to use names if you don't want to, but are there organisations out there that obviously you're working with that are really grabbing this with both hands and doing some cool stuff in a different way?
Yeah, just starting. So it went like this. Spinning, it's like in the movies, when you come out and you just, I guess when you skydive as example, and that was the first few months. And of course, all the money stopped. And then everyone went no training. Hence the article in April was don't stop people learning. This is a time to learn, because lifelong learning, Heather McGowan, it is the way to be part of this VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous world. We have to learn, because it's going to be changing all the time. So we have to continue to adapt. So you say then you get, okay, now I'm halfway through. Oh, I'm starting to enjoy myself. We're not there yet. But I think that the organisations are there. People are now starting to organise, and we're starting training with groups and starting to work through that. But it is just starting now. It's just starting in the last month, and it's now starting to fill up. So we're getting interest and demand going in now. People don't want to go too far because everyone's still waiting for everything to switch back to normal, and then we won't need any of this. I would love some clarity about the future, but quite frankly, I'm interested in foresight, and foresight is about building capability to determine your own future. To build that future. I would want to be doing that right now, regardless of the fact that we could all go back to normal in December. So there are some, and I'm going to hopefully, I don't know how this will go on, but I believe you're the new Oprah. And I think this is very important connection for people. Talking about social, this is fantastic. It's things that people want. And if it's on and you would have me back, I hope to have a couple of organisations to be able to speak to how they're doing that.
Oh, well, thank you. I've been telling Cam this for ages and he won't listen. So thank you. But in all seriousness, no, thank you. That's very kind. And we are learning as we're going, which is kind of the point. Just quickly. So for those of us because there's been a bit of talk and again, so many themes. So yes, you're definitely coming back. But so many themes that we're just touching on. But I think a lot of people, it is being in that kind of that frozen waiting period of, I don't know. And what if? And it might come back, so we'll just keep waiting. But I think individuals, so a lot of our community, women and men, are sort of saying, well, I don't know, what are the future skills I need? Am I going to be relevant? What's next for me? What is your view in terms of technology taking the place of humans? Like, what are the skills that we should be learning and embracing and getting comfortable with, do you think, that will take us into the future for all of us?
Well, if we look at where the growth in the labour market's going, it's in hybridity skills. So it's tech for sure. That's where the growth is, but it's hybrid tech jobs that have the human stuff, collaboration, problem solving, social intelligence, empathy, human-centred. So those sensing insights, those hybrid work, I definitely think that everyone needs to have basic digital skills, and we need to increase those for sure. There's a lot of training available around those. I think that's very important. We have to learn how to learn and unlearn and relearn. We must do that. There's a couple of courses on edX, I think, on that. They're okay, but they're getting better. No one really knew, so they're building it. So how do you do that? So I think that the skills for the future for humans, I think the Institute of Future were great. They had the first four, we've said the first four, and then they have two in the middle, which is human plus machine, and that is computational thinking, which is learning, not code, but learning how machines work, how artificial intelligence works, understanding models of artificial intelligence, and also cognitive load management. How do we manage all this stuff coming our way? And then the other four, the last four, which we're building now, and Heather McGowan's a transpersonality coach in that, is that it's virtual collaboration, which is we're using as intentional communities, cross-cultural collaboration, new media literacy, and transdisciplinarity. How do you go between all those four? So they're great for me. Institute for the Future, but also the World Economic Forum's got a really great list, and there are 18 others out there as well.
Yeah. And as you say, I mean, this is kind of the exciting part of the journey. We're learning, and I love that you make the point we also have to unlearn, because I think that's really important. We're at a time, and as I said, I'm already booking you in for another session, but where can, if people are curious to know more about you and the Academy and on the programs and all that sort of stuff, where can we find you, Donna?
thefutureworkskillsacademy.com.
And Cam, I'm sure we'll put that in the link as well. So for anyone who's really interested in how you actually optimize human performance, anything we've been talking about, there's so much interesting stuff that I know you're all probably contemplating for you and your teams. So please do reach out. Thanks for the link there, Cam, to the Future of Work Academy. Donna Eiby, it has been an absolute pleasure. It was my dog that barked, not yours. So next time, I'm sure we'll have another fascinating conversation. But genuinely, thank you so much. We could keep going, but everyone's got to get off their lunch break and have another Zoom meeting. How ironic. So thank you all for joining.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming along. And thank you for having me, Alex. It's fantastic. Absolutely love it.
Pleasure. Thank you. We'll see you again. Thank you all. Have a beautiful, beautiful Thursday and weekend, and we will see you on Tuesday at 12. See you then.